and then you've got a hospital trip. And that can put a damper on your day. Let me just tell you that. Welcome back, DIYers. Today, we're going to be looking at a miter saw and going over some of the basics on how to use it and how to use it safely. So I've got a DeWalt 12-inch dual bevel slide miter saw, and I'm going to go over some of that with you so you can see what the differences are between this and your basic miter saw, so that you can make sure you get the right one that you need for the job that you're doing. First thing I want to do though is go over some of the key safety features of a miter saw. The first thing is the lock. Now, they're going to be in a different place on each miter saw, but they're going to look very similar, and they're going to be located in a general vicinity where it pivots back here. So this little latch here is the lock. So you just kind of push down on the miter saw, pull out on that. It's just a little pin that pulls out, and that allows the saw to open up. Second safety feature we want to cover really quick is the guard, okay? Every miter saw is going to come equipped with a guard. You don't want to take this off. You don't want to use it and manipulate it in a way to where it's unsafe, okay? There are times when you're making a precise cut, you've got it marked, and you may need to lift that briefly to look at your mark and make sure that your blade lines up with your mark. Once you do that, let it back down so that none of that debris, chips of wood, or anything comes flying back at you, and it keeps your hand from being able to get to that blade. Okay, you want to make sure that you keep your hands away from the blade. I know that's obvious, but you gotta say it. The third safety feature to touch on briefly is the safety trigger. Okay, so miter saws will have a trigger that has a safety component to it. You can't just grab and pull. Miter saws are going to have some sort of feature like this where you can't just pull the trigger. It won't pull. You actually have to pull this lever over and then pull the trigger as a safety mechanism so that you can't just accidentally hit the trigger and cut off a finger. Now this saw in particular, like I said before, is a 12-inch blade, and it is on a slide, which means it can pull all the way out and all the way back, so that you can come all the way out here to make your cuts on your board. So with this particular saw, you can cut a 1x12 or a 2x12, bringing it all the way out. It actually comes out 13 inches. So you can do that and cut a 1x12, 2x12, whatever you need, that's that size or thinner. Now each miter saw is going to have a pivot to where it can go to different degree angles. So this one in particular can go to 50 degrees this direction and actually up to 60 degrees in the other direction if you need to make those really high angled cuts. Okay, most of the time you're only going to need to go to 45, but in those instances where you need to go a little wider, this can do that. So on your miter saw, you're going to have a lever or a knob of some sort right here at the end. It'll be a push down or a pull up of some sort, and that will allow the miter saw to spin. So then you can spin it to the angle that you need, let loose of that. It'll click into place when it clicks into a typical used angle. And then there's a few other ones that are in between there. There's a 15 degree, there's a 30 degree. It will click in those different angles that are commonly used. Another thing that a lot of miter saws can do is tilt this saw at an angle up and down. So this one is a double bevel, so it can actually go either direction. So if I need to lay down a board here and cut it at this angle, I can do that. It's got my angles here on the back. I can find a 30 degree or a 45 degree. I can lock it in place, and that cuts that at that angle. And this one in particular allows you to go the complete opposite way as well. Now, you can find miter saws that are like this. These are going to be more expensive. You're looking in the $400 to $500 range for a saw like this, but it's going to do a lot more and give you the ability to do jobs that are more complex and larger. Now, my other miter saw that I have is very basic. It can give you your angle cuts in either direction from 0 to 50, and it can bevel one way. So instead of being able to go both ways, it only goes one way. And if I have to cut a board the other way, I've got to turn it, flip it another direction. It also does not have the slide capability. So this one can slide out, cut up to 13 inches. This one's a 10-inch blade, and it can only cut what that blade can cut stationary. It doesn't swivel, it doesn't come out. It will only cut what it can cut in that range. And it's typically going to be about an 8-inch cut. If you have to go at a 45-degree angle, it won't even cut through a 2x6 completely. So then you have to cut it partially, flip it, turn it, cut it the rest of the way, maybe not get a precise cut. So it does make it more complicated. So if you're doing any kind of 45-degree angle cuts on a 1x6, 2x6, or bigger, 2x8, 2x10, then you'll want to go with something like this that has a larger cut radius, okay? Maybe not the slide, maybe you just need a 12-inch so that you can do 1x6s or 2x6s. That's perfectly fine. But if you do need something that gives you a little bit more of a range, this is a great one to go with. Doesn't have to be DeWalt. It can be other brands, but DeWalt just happens to be the brand that I have. So when using a miter saw, you always want to make sure that you take safety into consideration. You want to use safety glasses when you're cutting materials. I've made the mistake of not using safety glasses, getting composite decking in my eye or sawdust, and that can put a damper on your day. Let me just tell you that. So use safety glasses when you're using these. Also, keep your hand away from the blade, as far away from the blade as possible. There are lines on here not to put your hand past. If you have to put your hand closer to the blade, or if you have a piece that is a short piece that you need to cut an angle on, you can get it set up to where you need it, and then you can clamp it, okay? You can clamp it to the back of this rest here, and that will keep it in place for you to make your cut. Don't get your hand real close to that blade. If the blade happens to grab that piece of wood and pull, it's pulling your thumb right into the blade, and then you've got a hospital trip. So these are some of the basics of miter saw use. I'm going to give you one tip here. If you're going to be using a miter saw and you're going to be cutting boards that are longer than 4 feet, which typically they're going to be larger than 4 feet, you want to get yourself one of these. This is called a roller stand, okay? Basically, what it does is it provides you another surface for your board to come out and rest on. It rolls so that as you need to pull your board towards or away from the miter saw, it allows you to do that so that you can get your board exactly where it needs to be cut. This one in particular is Bauer. Drop a comment and let me know if you know where Bauer tools are from, okay? It's not a top brand tool. Yes, you can get roller stands that are made by DeWalt or made by Milwaukee or fill in the blank. All they do is provide a resting point and a roll for your board to sit on. Makes the job a little easier, makes things go a little smoother, but it's not a crucial tool, and you don't need to go spend $100 on this tool. Get one cheaper, get a Bauer brand, get a Cobalt brand from Lowe's, whatever brand you prefer, but don't go high dollar on this. It's not worth it. I know we didn't cover everything about a miter saw today, but I hope the information was useful to you, and I hope you know how to safely and effectively use a miter saw and which miter saw you need for the job that you're doing. I hope this was helpful to you. We'll see you next time.